I'm going to show you two very basic ways to do selections in GIS. Let's say you need to query information. And if you're following me, don't follow me on this one. Just watch it, and then you can do it on your own. Let's try to see, like, we have all those information about the land use, remember? We saw the attribute layer land use. But let's try to see, like, within this map, which buildings are, for example, commercial. Maybe I just want to color the commercial buildings, or I just want to map with the commercial buildings, but not the rest of it. So there are two ways to do it, okay? The first way is you can go and try to choose all the buildings one by one that you know that are commercial, which is not going to work in a big map like this. There are more than, remember, 1,000 buildings. Yeah. So we need to find an automated way. Now, GIS has this beautiful selection menu. And there are two smart selections, as we call it. One of them is called select by attributes. The other one is called select by location. Now, in our case, can you guess which one we want to use?
Location. Locations or by
well, think about it. If we need to use locations, we need to define a location. Like, defining the location of commercial buildings would be very tricky, because how would you define the locations of commercial buildings? But attribute might be better to use, because an attribute is basically something that exists in your table, right? Yeah. And if you know the land use exists in your table, then it's an attribute. Then you can say, select me all the buildings where the attribute land use equals to commercial, right? Yeah. So I will just go and select by attributes, and then it will land me into the smart selection wizard. Now, don't be panicked when you first see this window, but it's very easy to use. It might look confusing at first. Now, basically, it will ask us which layer we want to create the selection from. It's very intuitive. The first thing you need to define is which layer are we selecting, right? Which is the active layer we're working. So we just go and say parcels. And then it will give us all the available selection layers in parcels. It's telling me directly that I can base my selection based on any of this information, because those are the available fields in the attribute table. What it does is it reads the titles of the attribute table and gives them to you, so you don't need to write a formula. It just gives you the option to choose from them. So let's just say I want to do the land use. I will go and find the land use, and once I highlight the land use, I need to double click it. And then the moment I double click, you see it just brings it down to my formula window. So now it's saying, select from parcel where land use. This is a very basic math string, right? Yeah. We're just giving an if-then statement. So it's telling me select from parcel where land use. We just need to say equals to commercial, right? Yeah. But we know that the land use, remember we looked at the attribute table, doesn't work with words. It didn't say commercial, residential. It was giving weird numbers, right. Remember? 01, 02, 11, 05. Oh. So now we need that decoding document to understand what refers to what. Which number would refer to commercial. Does it make sense? Yes. So what I do is, while I'm here, I go to my folder that I put my desktop. Underneath Teams, I just start looking at the files. And I know this is my parcels file. So I navigate to parcels. And then I see something Pluto DD12 V1, which is an Acrobat. It says it's a PDF file. So this might be something familiar with me. I can open a PDF file, at least I know, outside the GIS. So I'm just going to double click and look at it, and I'll see that it's a document called Pluto Data Dictionary. Now, the reason it's called Pluto Data is the parcels file are coming from a giant data that's called Pluto Data. It's called Map Pluto, and it stands for, I think, the parcel lot database of blah, blah, whatever it is. So the parcels file that we work in here is actually a clipped version of Map Pluto. Map Pluto is the parcels file of the entire New York City. Does it make sense? Yeah. Okay. So I have this big document that's 53 pages long. Now I'm going through the field definitions, zoning, zoning, zoning. So I see something called land use category. I just click it. This is a digital PDF, so I can click it, which is nice. So it's all the way on the end of the page. It says land use category. It just says Department of City Planning assigns it, and then it's continued on the next page. And then remember the metadata would show you a lot of things. See, it tells you this is derived by blah, 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 and it's updated at this, and this is how it is done. And also I have the codes and decodes. So now I know what attribute table means in real life, right? Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I wanted to do commercial and office buildings, remember? I wanted to query the commercial and office buildings. So I look at it, what it codes is that it's 05. So I'm not gonna close this document, I'm just gonna put it underneath. And then I'll go back to my formula. Now I need to say land use equals to 5, right? Perfect, so I can just say equals to, and then before doing the type of 5, what I can do is, I can also say GIS, well, look at the variables in that field and show me the samples of it, right? So I know this time that 05 is commercial and office buildings, but I may not know always. So if you say get unique values, what it will do is it will analyze the layer and it will give you the selection of different numbers or ranges. So see, I have 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, 7, 8, 9, 11. I have everything. So I know that my selection was 5, right? So I double click. And if you see, everything in your formula needs to be in the codes. It will put it automatically, but if you type it by hand, you need to put everything into quotation. So now it says select from parcel where land use equals to 05. I'm almost ready. If I click OK, what will happen is that the software would go and select the parcels that have commercial use and outline it for me. Okay, so do you see the outlines on my screen? So basically, these are all the parcels that have commercial land use. So what can I do with it? What does it do good to me? Now, what I can do is I can go to the attribute table again. I will right-click the parcels and open attribute table. I would see that some things are also highlighted on the table as well, right? So let's say I wanted to do an analysis or I want to learn more information about these parcels. Now at least I know which one are they in the attribute table, but they still look scattered around because the table is just listed in a weird way, right?
Yeah.
So what I can do is I can switch underneath from here that says show all records to show selected records. And it directly, dynamically tells me I have only 74 parcels out of 1,149. So now I know that I have only 74 commercial parcels in this whole map. And I have a table that shows only those 74 parcels. Any questions? Okay, so what do I do with this? Now, usually, because the data for GIS comes in either as city-bound or district-bound, these files are huge. If you want to download the original building footprints for the New York City, the file is, I think, 200 megabytes, and when you unzip it, it's almost like half a gig. And it will be the entire 5 boroughs. If you open the file in your computer, zooming in and out would take 10 seconds each time. Because think about it, it needs to draw more than 1 million buildings. There are more than 1 million buildings in New York City. So by creating selections, one of the first things we do in GIS is that we trim or we clip our area of interest, right? I mean, in this case, we only did a selection based on land use. Let's assume this was the entire city. We could have used borough, and we could have just isolated borough equals to BK. That would have done what? Just isolated the Brooklyn data.
Right.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So this is how you can choose and trim, and I'll show you how to trim the file or clip the file into areas of interest. So one of the basic things that we use the selection is actually to create a more sort of like conceptualized map. Right? Does it make sense? Okay. So I have the selection active. What I can do is I can right-click the parcels now. Okay? I'm just right-clicking the layer that I made the selection. And then I go to data, and I see something called export data. Now, if I click export data, it will ask me, this is an export data wizard. It will ask me what I'm exporting. So by default, it needs to be on selected features. That's fine. I'm exporting just the selected features, right? And then it will ask me the coordinate system. The New York City files are all using the same coordinate system. So you don't need to learn or change coordinate systems because that's an entire, like, almost like a 2-week curriculum in GIS. basically they all use the same coordinate system because they're coming from the same source. So keeping this layer source data is completely fine. All you need to do is define what the name of the new GIS file is going to be and where you want to save it. That's it. So if you go to your folder connections again, your folder is going to be listed there. So I will go under Teams and I'll just name it as commercial, whatever you want to name. And then I'll just have to switch the save as type to a shapefile because we were working with a shapefile. Exporting a file from shapefile would go to another shapefile. So I will just say shapefile. The name is commercial. I'll just say save, and I'll just say OK. It will do the work, and then it will ask me if I want to add the exported data to the map as a layer. I will just say yes, so that I don't need to manually edit. And then I will turn everything off, and I'll just see, remember my selection that we did? So now we have a new file just based on that selection. Okay? Does it make sense? All right, so let's assume we were selecting or we want to trim something that we can't really make a smart selection, but we know about the location, right? So another way to do a quick selection is visually selecting it with a window, right? So in order, our last selection is still active in here. So in order to deselect, first I need to click somewhere empty on the map. So my visual selection tool is this white arrow with the green background that says select features. So if you click select features, and if you click somewhere empty on the map, the highlights would go away. So I don't have a selection anymore, right? Let's assume this is my project site, and I want to just choose, vaguely, let's say 2-3 blocks per meter around my project site. What I can do is I could be in the selection tool, and I could just draw this imaginary window, and just select with that as well. This works okay for any CAD software, right? So you can do non-smart selections like this as well. And in most cases, these may actually work better than the smart selections because you're just choosing based on a boundary, an imaginary boundary that you have, right? So ideally, I can right-click this through parcel and go to data, export this as a new shapefile as well. And that's how I clipped you guys this entire data set. Yes? What is the problem? Can you open the selection again?
If you want, I can link the presentation.
Yeah.
So I can email the link.
Oh no, I have it. Yeah, I have it. For me, I take notes. I remember. And I don't take notes. It's like I watched it. Right? In my memory,
But you as an architect, you can see how good this thing is for whatever you want to do there. So
you have to be careful. I just so it's helpful to bring in information. Too much. If you have an idea of what you're trying to do, this could be helpful too. If it's something that you're not sure and you're trying to we can be visual representations of information. Visually